Each story you hear on Planet Money starts with a question. What happens if we refund tariffs? Why are groceries so expensive? At NPR, we stand for your right to be curious because the forces shaping our world can be hard to see. Follow NPR's Planet Money wherever you get your podcasts and start seeing how the economy really works.
Think of some of your favorite Pacific Northwest critters. What's at the top of the list? Salmon? Okay, yeah, an important part of the food chain makes sense. Orcas? Classic choice, although I still haven't seen one for myself in 5 years, so I have a little grudge. Ooh, maybe some of our great birds? Bald eagles, or Steller's jays, or belted kingfishers, or, oh my god, puffins? What about the pigeon guillemot? Wait, you haven't heard of the pigeon guillemot? Do you even go here? I'm kidding. The pigeon guillemot is a rather common seabird in the region. You can probably find a bunch of them on Puget Sound and all along the Pacific coast right now, but they're not super well known, which is why Maria Mudd Ruth set out to document them in her new book. I'm Katie Campbell, and you're listening to a bonus episode of Meet Me Here, KUOW's Arts and Culture podcast. This month, the KUOW Book Club is reading Maria's book, The Bird with Flaming Red Feet, Seasons with an Uncommonly Common Seabird. I wanted to share my interview with Maria early in June rather than at the end of the month to give y'all plenty of time to put the book to work and see the pigeon guillemot for yourselves. They'll be near the shores this summer. But if you're thinking, Katie, why should I care about seeing this bird? What is so special about the pigeon guillemot? Well, you're in luck, because that's where we started our conversation.
What is so special about them? So many things. First off, it's a bird that's hidden in plain sight. And I lived in Puget Sound for 25 years and never saw this bird. Or maybe I did and didn't know what I was looking at. Never gave it a thought. And then once I started watching them, I realized they are fascinating, entertaining, playful, social, communicative, right near the shore, easy to see, easy to identify. And I knew nothing about them. And I thought, how have I missed this bird my whole time here? And how is no one talking about this bird? Because people are talking about other birds. And this was just a bird that was kind of ignored. And I thought, this is time to sort of bring it into some limelight.
And now you have a couple of theories in the book about why we're not noticing this lovely bird. Why is it that you and so many people in the area have missed the pigeon guillemot?
I think people are focused on more rare and offshore birds, generally speaking. I think they're almost kind of like pigeons, common, and you overlook them. They're abundant, or they're just far enough offshore that you're not really watching them. There is another bird in this family of seabirds that people are very familiar with, the iconic puffin. And I think people are focused on that charming, wonderful, imperiled bird, and that takes the limelight away from all these other common birds. So that was also part of my motivation for focusing on this bird, was just to share some of that love with other people and birders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember the point early in the book when you mentioned that they're in the same family as the puffin, and I wrote in my notes, well, that's just unfair to be in the family with the puffin.
Exactly.
I love a puffin, and I can see why I might look at the bird with a flaming red beak, not the bird with flaming red feet.
Right, exactly.
Now, you said that you went years without noticing this bird or realizing you were looking at this bird. Do you remember the first time that you saw one and knew you were seeing one?
Yes, I was invited to join a community science project called the Sailor Sea Guillemot Network. It's a community science project focused on studying this bird. It was just starting up in the South Sound, Olympia, where I live. It had begun on Whidbey Island. So we begin this effort down in South Sound, and I'm out on a beach, and there they are right in front of me. And they are playful, and they are splashing, and they are chattering, and they are whistling and trilling and just acting like they are having such a great time. And I remember laughing out loud because they were just so goofy and kind of uncoordinated on the water as they're diving and splashing. And I just thought, this is kind of fun. This is my kind of birding. And I kind of got addicted at that point and just wanted to keep returning and joined this community science program and have just been at it ever since. And that's been, I guess, 13 years now.
And we're going to talk more about the community science that has gone into watching these birds. But I have to say, I love the energy you are bringing to talking about this playful bird. It feels like it has gone into you and brought this playful spirit.
It has. I know we're not supposed to anthropomorphize, but this bird seems like it's having fun. It seems joyful. It seems really happy to be, together in a colony and enjoying the sun and the water and the bluffs and the beach. They seem to be having a great time. And this is not the story for all seabirds. Some seabirds are not having a great time for lots of reasons. They behaviorally don't exhibit fun, but also they're endangered or imperiled. And here we have a relatively common bird, and it's, I think, expressing that kind of excitement about being alive. And I feel that every day when I'm down on the beach and just out there on the beautiful Puget Sound. I just feel joyful, and maybe that is my little sort of spirit bird out there on the water.
Yeah, it's just like we are abundant and we are living life's abundance.
Yeah.
The joy also, I have the book in front of me, so I'm going to grab it. The joy comes through in the book, not just in your words, but in the illustrations. I feel like you've got a whole page at the front with the pigeon guillemot vocalizations, and it's the sound waves that it makes. Talk a little bit about the illustrations that went into this book, including things like the vibration that a trill makes, the photos that you have. Why was it so important to bring the visual joy to this book?
I was trying to make this I would say, anti-field guide.
Ooh.
I wanted to add art and different kinds of art into the book to tell a different story, to appeal to different sensibilities of readers, birders, and non-birders. So it was important to me to include photographs. One, because so many of our surveyors across Puget Sound have really long lenses and are capturing behaviors that we can't see. One, because the guillemots are moving too quickly, or they're amid splashes. So they've got these long lenses, fast shutter speed, and they're capturing these very acrobatic, wonderful, expressive postures of this very lively bird. So the photographs tell those stories. The art in the book, I have a lino-cut drawings, I have watercolors, a scratch board, cut feathers, all these art pieces sort of express a different side of the guillemot. And one in particular, a scratch board shows 2 adult guillemots feeding a chick. We would never be able to see that in real life because as you would approach a nesting site, the birds would flush. They would just fly away because you're disturbing them. So here we have an artist, Madison Mayfield, at the Burke Museum, the collections curator, and she did this beautiful piece that shows this really intimate family portrait that we can't see. And I just thought bringing those parts of the guillemot's life to the reader was very important.
Yeah.
The vocalizations, I think that's my pride and my joy for this book is to take what was a very dry scientific paper from the 1980s describing the guillemot's vocalizations. They're very vocal birds, a huge repertory of trills and whistles and calls with very specific meanings that they pair with very specific postures.
Oh.
So you can, if you're watching the guillemots, look at their body language, listen for the call, and say, oh, that one is trying to attract a mate. That one is defending a territory. That one is angry. This one is about ready to fly. So how do we get that information into the book? And telling all those stories just in straightforward narrative writing would be tediously boring. So the sonograms, which you mentioned, the squiggly lines, are the graphic representation of the bird's call. And the way I wanted to show those was through calligraphy, because the calls were sort of moved to me like calligraphy. So here we have now a calligrapher taking the scientific data, listening to the calls, looking at those old sonograms from the 80s, and creating her own representation of them based in the science. So now we have this nice saturated dark ink that we can use for reproduction in the book. And so many of the chapters start with one of the sonograms paired with that posture. And then in the back of the book is sort of the Rosetta Stone explaining what that posture means, what the call sounds like, and what it means in terms of what the guillemot is communicating to its colony or to a specific bird. And for birders, you can kind of become your own Dr. Doolittle or your guillemot whisperer if you're out there with the book information.
Amazing. Now, listening to all of that information, all of the research you have done into this bird, it might shock some people, Maria, to learn that you do not consider yourself a birder. I don't necessarily consider myself a capital B birder. I am a bird person. I've got a little tattoo of my favorite bird on my arm. Everything you've said leads me to believe you are a birder. Why do you not consider yourself such?
Well, things kind of changed in the middle of this project. I'm really a one-bird birder. I like focusing on one bird at a time and making a deep dive. So I wrote a book on the marbled murrelet, which is in the same family of alcids, these seabirds that the guillemot is in the family of. And I spent 5 years writing that book. Absolutely loved doing a deep dive into the entire universe of this one bird. So the same thing happened with the pigeon guillemot. And I didn't think you could be a birder and only study one bird. I mean, I know some other birds, but for me, I guess maybe my failure of imagination is part of the problem here. Not imagining that, you didn't have to have a life list. You didn't have to have a good pair of binoculars. You didn't have to make, birding trips. You didn't have to go places in order to bird. So I just didn't think there was kind of room for someone like me who was really a very casual birder and maybe, somewhat obsessive on one particular bird. And I just find it gratifying way to enjoy birds. And so I guess I'm a kind of a birder. Maybe yes. I would say that much. A one-bird birder.
I think I like that. Also, you mentioned a life list. There are a lot of very serious birders who are like, if I don't see X bird before I die, life has not been worth living. Maybe not quite that hardcore. But yeah, they keep a list of the birds that they see throughout life, including very rare specimens, which the pigeon guillemot is not, which is very funny that has become your focus. I love that.
Yeah.
You talk about how birding or just watching this one bird or what have you can lead to all sorts of other beautiful observations. You write this on page 27. Over 3 months, our what elses have included 2 young deer high-stepping through the shallow water as they walk down the beach, a flock of common murres flying down the inlet, western flycatchers feeding insects to the juvenile brown-headed cowbird they were unwittingly raising, a family of red-breasted mergansers, and a lone double-crested cormorant catching fish. Lion's mane jellyfish and sea stars stranded on the beach, jumping salmon and squirting clams, an American robin showing its offspring how to hunt the tiny sand fleas jumping all over the beach, scuttling inch-wide yellow shore crabs you could easily miss, even on the slowest of beach walks. We've seen belted kingfishers patrolling the beach, American white pelicans resting on the far shore, as well as river otters, harbor seals, sea lions, white-sided dolphins, and a pod of orcas swimming close to the shore. These wildlife observations aren't part of the official Guillemot survey, but it seems disrespectful to leave the beach without acknowledging the presence of these other precious lives. I mean, that sounds amazing. Talk about what it's like to go out, you're really just looking for this bird, but then you get to observe nature in this way, in so many forms.
The beach surveys that we do, we spend a little over an hour on the beach every week. You are sitting on the beach in such a way that you are essentially impersonating driftwood. You're still, you're in your beige clothing, and you just become very grounded and quiet and observant. And yes, you are looking for pigeon guillemots, and you are watching carefully, you are collecting data, but you can't help but see all these other things. Sort of in the periphery, everything starts moving, and you realize how dynamic and energized and alive everything is. It's the air, it's the water, it's the sand, the tiniest things. And you see them because you are listening and you are quiet and you're just sort of bristling with antenna, trying to pick up all the things that are in the guillemot's world. And that, for me, is keeping this list, this what else is. The list is massive. And we don't know, are these parts of the guillemot's community? Do they have relationships? Is it part of their ecological community? Or are they just sort of present in the same environment? But they're all there together for a reason, and it just so enriches your experience of a place. It's not just about identifying the bird, but seeing everything else in its universe. And that's just so satisfying and enriching.
It was really fun to have those additional tidbits throughout the book of just like, oh yeah, then this is going on, even if sometimes it's a predator or a threat to the pigeon guillemots.
Right. We see a lot of bald eagles on our beach, and that's really interesting. They're beautiful, majestic birds. They nest in the trees right above the bluff where the guillemots are nesting, and they will essentially shut down the activity of a guillemot colony because they're a potential predator. And I've never seen an actual act of predation, but their very presence will cause the guillemots to move offshore, to separate, and it elicits their scream call. So sometimes we can't see the eagle from where we're sitting, and we see and hear the guillemots respond. And we look around, and we don't see anything. And it's like, what are they worried about? What's upsetting them? And we keep looking, and eventually someone will see the eagle. There's usually always an eagle. And the guillemots, they're not just trilling or screaming or calling for no reason, right? There's a purpose and intention to their call. So it's really fun to listen to the guillemot and try to figure out what's in their environment that we can't see.
Oh, yeah. Like you said, be your own Dr. Dolittle and speak their language and figure out what predator is out there today.
Yeah.
More with Maria Mudd Ruth in just a minute.
With political tensions at a new peak, what does it take to stay strong, engaged, and grounded in these dangerously divided times? I'm Monica Guzman, host of A Braver Way. Join me and my guests from across the political spectrum. We'll share tools, insights, and messy, real-life stories to help you meet this moment without losing heart. Listen to A Braver Way on the KUOW app or wherever you get podcasts.
This is also why I wanted to talk to you in early June rather than at the end of the month like we typically do at the KUOW Book Club. We want folks to know how to see these birds sooner rather than later. So tell us about the survey that made the book possible, and then we're going to get into how folks can also participate in just going out and seeing them for themselves.
Great. So I am part of a community science program started in 2003 on Whidbey Island, essentially by one woman who was merely curious about the guillemots she was seeing offshore. She didn't know anything about them, so she thought, well, I'll go do a little research, and she found nothing about them. So she went to her local Audubon chapter on Whidbey and said, hey, does anyone want to go out kayaking with me and kind of go around the island and see what we can see? She got 28 people to join her, get in the kayaks, and go around the island. They were finding guillemots everywhere, and that let's try to do a study. So she paired up with another scientist. This is Frances Wood and Phyllis Kind, and they together created a protocol, which is the step-by-step procedure for collecting scientific data. They created a data sheet, they recruited people, and they spread out on the beach and engaged the scientists. And their goal was to learn about the guillemots, to collect scientific data that the scientists needed and couldn't get otherwise. So they start this program. It goes for 10 years. It's wildly successful. They've even had waiting lists to volunteer for this. It's all volunteer run. Wow. They began a chapter in the South Sound in 2013, which is when I joined, and then they expanded, and now it's on Bainbridge Island, on Vashon Island, on Camano Island, Clallam County, East Jefferson County. They are now moving into British Columbia. Wildly successful, just a great model for community science. And why are we collecting this data? Because no one else is, first off. And around the same time the network was established, the state chose the pigeon guillemot and 3 other seabirds as indicator species. So the state's progress on cleaning up Puget Sound needed to have some metrics. Are we making progress? Are we cleaning up? Are we restoring habitat? So in the marine environment, the guillemot is one of those birds that can tell the scientist if they're making progress. So if the guillemots are doing well, if the guillemots are getting enough to eat, if the guillemots have adequate nesting habitat, they're doing great. And that's a sign that something's going right in the ecosystem, in the marine environment. And right now, there are 250 community scientists, 1 staff member, I would say equally as devoted and passionate about this bird as I am, who just can't get enough of this experience.
Maybe not as devoted as you, because you wrote the book, Maria.
It's true. Well, my book is really trying to capture the voices of the community. I feel like my team of 10 people, plus all the stories of the network and of the guillemots themselves, are really part of this book. The artists, the scientists, all the researchers, I really tried to bring those voices in. And I think if I had just been studying the guillemot myself, this would not be a very interesting book.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was really cool to hear you talk about this, but to read about the citizen scientists and the volunteers that make this possible. It's so special that it's all around this one critter.
Yeah.
Now, I imagine some folks are going to hear this and be like, well, I want to do that. How do folks get involved? Is there still time to help this season?
There is time if they go to the Salish Sea Guillemot Network website. That will guide them to a tab for volunteering and signing up. There are training videos online, so all the material is there. You don't have to physically go and be trained, but there is some training involved. We always welcome new volunteers to the sites to just experience the guillemot and to help with the data. And sometimes our colonies are so busy that we really need extra hands. But to see them, they're all over Puget Sound. In Seattle, I mean, you can go to the Ballard Locks, you can go to Alki, you can go to Shoal Marina, you can go down to the Olympic Sculpture Park just north of there. They're all over. The best place, well, one of the guaranteed places almost, is to hop on the ferry and go to Bainbridge Island. These birds love to nest in and hang around ferry terminals in the infrastructure there. So they're kind of urban that way. They don't need pristine, far offshore habitats like a lot of other seabirds. So they are, kind of pigeon-esque in that way, right? I know. I don't want to compare them to pigeons because they're really not pigeons, but they tolerate human presence and they get used to people rather quickly. And I think we must be safe for them somehow, or indicate an environment where there are no eagles. I'm not really sure, but yes. Yeah.
There's no human-specific alarm call yet,
right?
That
we know of. No.
Is there a really good time of day and time of year to see them?
Yes. This is the time of year to see them. They spend the winter offshore typically, so you would need a boat to go see them. This time of year, they're coming in because they are nesting in our bluffs and other old ferry docks and wharves and jetties. So you can see them now close up, even without binoculars, all along the shore. I'd recommend binoculars because it's really fun to see their red feet and the red mouth linings. But this is a great time. They will come in for nesting, and you can see our colonies go from anywhere from, 2 birds to, say, 100 birds or so, even though there are larger colonies elsewhere. So you'll get a good group of, 10, 20, 30 birds, and then you start watching them socialize and have fun together in these, they're called water games. And it is like sort of a display. Early in the morning is best. That's when they're most active, but you'll see them throughout the day. And at high tide, the tide moves them closer to shore or reduces that beach exposure. So they're a seabird, so they're comfortable and safe on the water. So the less beach they have to cross to get to their nests, the better for them. So high tide, early morning is great.
Now, here's the thing, though. You are mentioning that they are nesting, so they're hatching their young. I imagine people should be pretty mindful of the babies. Do you have any advice to respect their space?
Yes, I would say it's more important to respect the space of the adult guillemots. They breed or they mate on land and offshore on the rocks, but you will see them sitting on the beach or resting on the beach, copulating on the beach. So if you're out walking your dog, just sit down and watch and don't walk through the colony on the beach or don't disturb them. If you're kayaking, we think kayaks are quiet and just move right through, but you can really disturb the birds that way. If they flush off the beach, move away, you've disturbed a really important behavior. So making sure that they feel comfortable on land. They're very skittish on land. This is not their territory. Right. And they're only on land during the summer very briefly. So while they're incubating their eggs and while they're feeding their chick.
So if you come across one, pick up your copy of The Bird with Flaming Red Feet, just camp out a little bit, watch them, read about the birds.
Right. See what you can learn.
Let them do their thing.
Yeah.
For my last question, I want to go back to my first question about why dedicating a whole book to these goofballs. Why is it important to know how these birds in our region are doing? You mentioned they're an indicator species. Why do we need these surveys? Why should people read this book? Why is it important that we know what they're up to?
Right. Lots of really good questions. I think fundamentally, my goal was to see how well I could learn about the needs of a bird I share the planet with, and how my life intersects theirs, and how my lifestyle, my choices might impact theirs. So whether you're in love with a guillemot or another bird or a tree or a frog or an insect, trying to understand what that animal needs or what that plant needs to survive, that's really important. And that, I guess it's sort of compassion, is to say, well, what can I do to help this bird thrive and survive? And that passion, that feeling toward the guillemot, I think translates all across the living world. And I'm always encouraging people, it's like, sure, the guillemot might be your bird. It was certainly my bird, but there are, thousands of birds. I mean, just an untold number of species that at this point all need champions, and people to say, it's going to just step back a bit and say, how can I help this bird thrive? And it'd be fun to challenge your listeners to say, what's my one bird and what can I learn about it, and just get more deeply into its life. I think the planet will be a lot better off if we just take that approach.
Maria Mudd Ruth, author of The Bird with Flaming Red Feet, Seasons with an Uncommonly Common Seabird. Thank you so much for this. This was lovely.
Thank you so much for having me, Katie.
And thank you for listening to this bonus episode of Meet Me Here. Meet Me Here is produced by KUOW, a proud member of the NPR network. It's hosted by me, Katie Campbell, Dyer Oxley, and Jeannie Yandel. And it's produced by Brandy Fullwood, Kyle Norris, and Matt Martin. Our editor is Phyllis Fletcher. You can find more and support the show at kuow.org/meet. I'm Katie Campbell, and I'll meet y'all back here for our next regularly scheduled episode on Wednesday.
With political tensions at a new peak, what does it take to stay strong, engaged, and grounded in these dangerously divided times? I'm Monica Guzman, host of A Braver Way. Join me and my guests from across the political spectrum. We'll share tools, insights, and messy, real-life stories to help you meet this moment without losing heart. Listen to A Braver Way on the KUOW app or wherever you get podcasts.